Yo, what's going on, guys? Havoc here, I'm back. Welcome to Clash Clans Mythbusters. We're back at it again, testing ye old myths, or let's be real, a better title would be, does this glitch work or nah? But hey, if you got any myths of your own, drop them down below and there's a chance I'll try them in an episode like many of these in this video. With that being said, let's get right into it.
Let's do this.
Myth. Defending fire mites die when frozen. Myth busted. You know, it would have been cool and a nice Easter egg if it did because, you know, fire and ice. But no, we're talking about a game where you can literally freeze a torch. There was also another that I cannot take damage from a fireball, but that was busted because when I tried it, it got absolutely fried. Myth. A siege barracks can be moved by a tornado. Myth confirmed. Okay, but the troops inside must have been like... Seeing something that usually doesn't move is definitely strange. But it makes sense, any unit in the game can move. Some of them just need to be pulled or pushed one way or another because they don't do it themselves. The same thing goes for the troop launcher and the furnace. Immobile my butt. It's still a weird sight though. Usually tornado traps are not laying out in the open where you normally place these things. It usually only happens like in a progress base, for example, or if there's a giant hole in the middle of the base for some reason. Myth. Using the recall spell on the magic mirror clones of the queen will allow you to exceed its maximum recall capacity. Myth busted. For a second, I thought this did work when I was initially trying it, but no, I was just doing the math wrong. At no point in my test did the recall spell ever carry more than 113, which is the max capacity. I even tried it at different levels to be sure and like use different troops and equipment, but I couldn't get it to exceed the limit. However, there is a good chance that this may have been a bug at some point. Myth. In the builder base, when you get 100% and try to end the match, as soon as you get 200%, it will finish the match faster. Myth confirmed. Well, if you ever wanted to save a couple seconds of your life, this is one way to do it. I was not expecting it to make any difference, but yeah, if you try to end it, it doesn't matter if you get 100% or not, it will end the match immediately, rather than it waiting about 3 seconds like it normally does. It's probably one of those things that no one will ever do, but it's cool that you can. Myth. If a storage is emptied and a builder repairs it, it fills back up. Myth. Hate that some. Unlimited dark elixir. No, of course, it's just visual. This is due to the fill level of the storage being tied to the damage it takes, so reversing that effect also fills the storage back up. You're basically hitting the undo button. But obviously, the storage isn't filling back up with anything, so it's kinda true, but not really. It's just visual. Myth. When using a cannon card in cannon mode in the builder base, right before the last cannon is destroyed, immediately disarm the cannon and it will disappear. Myth confirmed. Normally, if a match ends and a cannon card is in mortar mode, it will turn back into cannon mode to head toward the second stage because it needs its wheels. But this one goes absolutely nuts until eventually disappearing. It's got quite the exit. It appears this is caused by it getting stuck trying to switch modes as it's programmed to do it at the end of the match. But if you do it yourself at the right time, it totally freaks out. Myth. A haste or rage spell on top of a jump spell allows troops to jump farther. Myth busted. I'm sure many of you have heard or even seen this with your own two eyes. How can you tell me it's busted? However, the jump spell doesn't interact with other spells like this, or at least intentionally. A haste or rage making troops faster doesn't allow them to jump farther. I tried this several ways and they wouldn't budge. However, there is, or at least used to be, a bug about 10 years ago that allowed this to happen from time to time. This was because troops normally retain some of that jump ability for a very short time after exiting the jump spell, and and what the rage or haste was doing was extending that short time. But this was not normal behavior. Back in 2015, it should have been fixed, but it would still occasionally happen in modern times. With that in mind, I tried this with one of the fastest moving troops in the game, a Valkyrie under a haste, but I could not get her to jump over that wall no matter what I tried. Myth. You can prevent the dragon from spawning in Dragon's Lair by destroying it with 2 cookies under a rage and invisibility. Myth confirmed. That was not my first try. I tried it way too many times, and every time the dragon would pop out. I really thought this one was busted for sure. However, it turns out it is possible. You just have very little room for error. You have to make sure the invisibility doesn't run out, and the cookies have to be deployed at the exact same time. If they're off even slightly, one of them will attack first, causing the dragon to deploy due to it taking enough damage. I had a similar myth that involved taking out the cave with skeleton spells to prevent the dragon from spawning. At first, it looks like it's gonna work, but then the dragon pops out again due to it taking enough damage, so that one was busted. However, I found it strange that the skeletons did not activate it by, being right next to it. And then I found out that it doesn't detect a bunch of other troops like bats and fire mites. I believe it's a sub-troop thing, but I didn't want to try every sub-troop. Anyway, I learned a lot more about this goblin map than I ever need to know. Myth. The tip you get on the loading screen depends on which village you were on before you quit the game. Myth confirmed. I learn something new every day. I personally have never paid much attention to the tips, let alone paid attention to which village I got off 3 days ago, but this was a pretty cool find. I tried over and over again, specifically in the builder base, because it has less tips to show, and yeah, it only showed me builder base specific tips and some other general stuff like Supercell ID and how to keep a village safe, which applies to both villages. Myth. In the clan capital, the less troops you use, the more loot you get. Myth. This may be obvious to some, but since this has changed a couple times, I thought someone out there might not actually know. Admittedly, at one point, I was confused about this too. Yes, you do get a bonus for dropping less troops, but this only applies to attacks that end in a 3-star. Also, it will still count troops that you deploy. It counts the remaining housing space of all troops, whether you deploy them or not, as long as they're still alive. So it's technically true, but there's more to it. Myth. Skeletons placed on top of multiple walls disappear. Myth confirmed. We tried something similar in a previous episode where we dropped a siege machine and some walls and the clan castle troops disappeared. The same thing is going on here. You're essentially removing all possible spawning tiles, so it has nowhere to spawn within its radius. And because it doesn't spawn, it's not under the walls, so destroying them doesn't reveal the skeletons. It's just a spell chilling there. However, if you make the walls small enough, it will force spawn them outside the walls. There seems to be a safety measure here in case this happens during a live battle. A rule of thumb, if you're gonna drop something that spawns on top of that many walls, don't do it. It'll vanish. It's basically a black hole. Myth. A spring trap can friendly fire to clan castle troops if an enemy steps on it while they're on it. Myth busted. Alright, I left this one for last because this is one of my personal submissions. This came from when I read from a 2012 advanced guide that spring traps will friendly fire, so I was really curious if this was even a thing for a really long time, and to me this eventually became a myth because I never actually saw it happen. It intrigued me so much, especially because this guide was written by a well-respected clasher who knew what he was talking about. Flammy. I'm sure some OGs may remember him. Now, it's definitely possible that Flammy could have been mistaken, or that the mechanics changed sometime within the past 13 years, but I could not get this to work. I looked very closely that my troops were standing on the spring shaft while it was activated, and it did not cause any friendly fire. It would have been pretty cool to see though. Yeah, that wraps up today's video, and those are the myths I got around to try. Like I said in the beginning, feel free to drop your own down below. If you guys have been commenting some pretty interesting stuff in these episodes. Hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. If you guys want to check the previous episodes out, the link will be down below for the entire playlist. But alternatively, YouTube thinks you'll like this next video, so why don't you check it out. As always, see you guys in the next one. Peace!